I'm grateful to be in this role of president because it allows me to serve this organization that is just a part of my soul. And and you guys are my soul brothers and sisters. So, but in order to talk about where we're going, it's useful to know a little bit about where we came from. So, well, all right. The Theosophical Society is rooted in history, but we are, I believe and hope, focused on the future. So today we'll look a little bit at the historical roots, I think probably because we all find those fascinating to some degree, and investigate how we've negotiated the past 148 years, examine where we are now, and look a little bit toward the future. So this is what the United States was like in 1875 when our organization was founded. The United States had just celebrated its 99th birthday. The Civil War had only been over for 10 years, but the country was still gripped with division and anger. Native American tribes were fighting for their lives, their culture, their land, with Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse as leaders. And the Wild West was just that, wild and dangerous. Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and Wyatt Earp were alive and active during this time. The shootout at the OK Corral won't happen for another 6 years. I don't typically think of HPB and Colonel Olcott as living in the same time frame as Billy the Kid. The women's suffrage movement, as well as the temperance movement, were both in full swing. But women were basically considered second-class citizens and had very few rights. People traveled by horse, by steam engine, and by boat. Communication was primarily through letters and telegraphs. The main religion in the United States at that time was Protestant, but there seemed to be a growing conflict between religion and science of the day. And it moved people toward a more materialistic perspective of the world, which we knew. I do want to point out to you that in 1880, which is a little past 1875, Seattle had 3,500, its population was 3,500. 3,500 was not yet incorporated. I'm sure that you probably are well aware of that. This picture right here is the intersection between James Street and Yesler Way in 1880. And this picture is also of Seattle. And it's a picture taken in 1889, which is a good bit after 1875. And this is a view from Broadway and James Street. Doesn't look like that now, does it? No. It was a very different time. I mean, it's helpful to remember this. All of this was happening while HPB, Colonel Olcott, and others were forming the Theosophical Society. Regardless of spiritual awareness and insight, human beings are still conditioned by the world around them, even HPB and Colonel Olcott. This is something that I believe we must always keep in the back of our minds as we study the materials from the first generation or generations of Theosophists. Before we continue, I'd like to give just a little bit of background regarding the Mahatmas, who it is said were behind the founding of the Theosophical Society. While many of you are already familiar with this concept, I think it bears repeating. Throughout the ages, there have been elders, wise ones, who embody spiritual knowledge and share what many call the ageless wisdom. If we were to meet one of them, I think that they would immediately be known by their very special nature, recognizable by the innate strength, compassion, wisdom, and love that emanates from them. They've been known by many names, and some of those names have even disappeared into the depths of history. Within the Theosophical teachings, these wise ones are referred to in several ways: the Mahatmas, the masters, or adepts. H.P. Blavatsky, co-founder of the TS, introduced the concept of the Mahatmas to the Western world in the latter half of the 19th century. The word adept derives from the Latin adeptus, meaning one who has obtained. Blavatsky defines adept as, in occultism, one who has reached the stage of initiation and become a master in the science of esoteric philosophy. The term Mahatma is from Sanskrit, Maha meaning great, and Atma meaning soul. Therefore, Mahatma means great soul. Within the Theosophical literature, one of the basic teachings focuses on what many have called spiritual development. Blavatsky, in Volume 2 of The Secret Doctrine, states that there is, quote, an inherent law of progressive development. While this teaching has tremendous depth, this afternoon we'll explore it just a little bit. As rays of the divine, whatever we choose to call it, our souls, that higher aspect of ourselves, move along a clearly defined path of progressive development. When this higher aspect of ourselves takes on a physical form, we begin to have experiences in the physical world. When we wear these human bodies, we gather personal and individual experiences. And it is through these experiences that we grow and develop. We begin to experience the world as a self-conscious entity, moving along the path of progressive development. The teaching of reincarnation from a theosophical perspective is predicated upon the law of progressive development. The esoteric perspective tells us that our souls are on a spiritual pilgrimage, incarnating in physical forms through lifetime after lifetime. And in each lifetime, we're learning, growing, and expanding our consciousness, moving forward on the path of progressive development. I know you all are aware of this, but again, it's useful, I think, to just touch base on it. Former national president of the Theosophical Society in America, Dr. John Algeo, tells us, the purpose of our many lives is to further the evolutionary development of our minds and souls. Through this process, we become fully human. That is to say, we eventually gain control and understanding of this physical form. I'm not fully human yet. I don't have full control of my thoughts, my emotions, or sometimes even my physical reactions. But I'm learning, aren't you? With the sometimes unperceived goal of becoming fully human. Therefore, it makes sense that there are human beings who are farther along this path of progressive development. This group of individuals are human beings who, to quote Ali Ritzema, by their inner self-education and self-training, have activated the higher powers which are latent in every one of us. These are the adepts, the Mahatmas, the great souls who have appeared periodically throughout history. These great ones, we are told, initiated the founding of the Theosophical Society and specifically chose HPB and Alcott for this work. in letter number 44 in the Barker edition, not the Andrew Barker edition, but the A.T. Barker edition, written in 1882 by the Mahatma Moria to Senate, AP Senate. The founding of the society and its founders is discussed. The Mahatma says, one or two of us hoped that the world had so far advanced intellectually, if not intuitionally, that the occult doctrine might gain an intellectual acceptance, and the impulse given for a new cycle of occult research. Others, wiser as it would now seem, held differently. But consent was given for the trial. It was stipulated, however, that the experiment should be made independently of our personal management, that there should be no abnormal interference by ourselves. So, casting about, we found in America the man to stand as leader, a man of great moral courage, unselfish, and having other good qualities. He was far from being the best, but he was the best one available. With him, we associated a woman of most exceptional and wonderful endowments. Combined with them, she had strong personal defects, but just as she was, there was no second to her living fit for this work. We sent her to America, brought them together, and the trial began. From the first, both she and he were given to clearly understand that the issue lay entirely with themselves, and both offered themselves for the trial for a certain remuneration in the far distant future. As K.H. would say, soldier volunteers for a forlorn hope. All right. Furthermore, we can look to the Mahachohan letter that was written in late 1881 or early 1882 by the Mahatma K.H. regarding a conversation held with the Mahachohan about the teachings shared by the Theosophical Society. We read, for our doctrines to practically react on the so-called moral code, or the ideas of truthfulness, purity, self-denial, charity, etc., we have to preach and popularize a knowledge of theosophy. It is not the individual and determined purpose of attaining oneself nirvana, the culmination of all knowledge and absolute wisdom, which is, after all, only an exalted and glorious selfishness, but the self-sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead on the right path our neighbor, to cause as many of our fellow creatures as we possibly can to benefit by it, which constitutes the true Theosophists. Therefore, we find that the Theosophical Society was founded in this world of strife, materialism, grief, and anger to share the theosophical teachings in an effort to help others, to help humanity. We also find that true Theosophists are the ones who share these teachings. Sorry, can you still see? Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I accidentally paused my screen sharing.
You're fine.
The sharing of theosophy has always been paramount in the minds of most theosophists, yet the manner of sharing has changed through the decades. This organization is almost 150 years old, and theosophists have endeavored to share the ageless wisdom in any number of ways. In fact, the concepts shared by the first generation of theosophists that were foreign and alien in the late 19th and early 20th century are now commonplace Words such as karma, reincarnation, and dharma are easily used by many who do not consider themselves theosophists or are even interested in Eastern spiritual traditions. In many respects, the Theosophical Society is the grandmother of what has been called the New Age. Any number of organizations can trace their lineage and teachings back to the teachings of Theosophy and the Theosophical Society. Theosophical ideas have had an enormous impact on a wide variety of individuals and in diverse areas. We can look to the individuals whose names are listed on the PowerPoint, um, and so many more beyond these. We have, in fact, shared the Theosophical teaching. Of course, even grandmothers have their history and their past. Being almost 150 years old, there have been some individuals, some statements, and even some actions that have been questionable. In other words, we have 150 years of baggage that goes along with 150 years of inspiration and service to humanity. We must always remember that the Theosophical Society is an organization, a form composed of human beings who collectively are in sympathy with or support of the three objects. As human beings, we sometimes make poor choices, even with the best of intentions. We are not perfected human beings. Therefore, when we come across some of these instances, it is, from my perspective, most useful to remember that personalities are temporary. The ageless wisdom teachings are eternal. The teachings are the most important aspect, far above and beyond any personality initiated issues. Well, we've talked a good bit about the past, but let's look at where we are today with the TSA and where we are as members. Well, you know, of course, that we are composed of lodges and study centers and members at large nationwide. Membership through the years has shifted from being primarily through lodges and study centers to being primarily members at large. This, of course, could be caused by the transitory nature of our society today. People move from place to place, job to job. It becomes a little bit more difficult to find a sense of community. But our lodges and study centers do provide a sense of community for many members. Today, we have approximately 3,600 members in the United States with about 80 lodges and study centers that range from Hawaii to Seattle to the Northeast to Miami. Our national headquarters, and I know that many of you have had an opportunity to visit, and I hope you'll come again when it's a little bit easier to travel, is named Alcott after the president founder. It's located in Wheaton, Illinois, about 30 miles west of Chicago, and it's been there since 1926. It's composed of 42 acres in a very urban suburban area. The property has recently become a level 1 arboretum named the Alcott Arboretum at the Theosophical Society. And we're working toward becoming a level 2 arboretum, which would require identifying 100 different species of trees on the property. Well, we know this is a possibility. We recently had a tree inventory, and I think it was Thursday or Friday, I don't remember, the days run together, we got the report, and we have 76 different species of trees identified on our property. They identified over 1,000 trees on the property, and that did not include 28 groupings of trees that they didn't inventory individually. Our headquarters is primarily administrative for the work of the TSA, but we also provide programming and outreach for members and seekers alike. We have 13 different departments, ranging from membership to outreach through programming to the library, the Henry Steele Alcott Library, Quest Bookshop, and support departments like maintenance, accounting, and housekeeping. Every staff member, and there are about 40, 20 full-time and 20 half-time, is committed to the work of the Theosophical Society in America. They recognize that they are ambassadors for the Theosophical Society, just as each of us are. All of us are ambassadors for the ageless wisdom. We are role models. People observe how we handle ourselves in difficult situations, at difficult times, and they wonder about our equanimity. They perceive our behaviors, kind, caring, inclusive, ethical, and wonder how that occurred. The Theosophical teachings provide the basis for our equanimity, our inclusiveness, our kindness, our ethical behavior. We are the walking representatives of the ageless wisdom. And through us, others will find it. This is our calling as Theosophists and our responsibility in today's world. Krishnamurti told us that, quote, truth is a pathless land. Truth is a pathless land. All of us consider the ageless wisdom teachings to be the truth, or at least the portion of the truth that we're able to glimpse a little bit at this time. Certainly one could interpret Krishnamurti's statement in any number of ways, but it seems clear that one of the primary meanings of his statement is that there is not simply one path that leads us to the ageless wisdom. There are many paths that lead in this direction. As seekers for truth, that is, as individuals in physical manifestation who are seeking, we can't know absolute truth. It's beyond our comprehension at this stage of development. We may perceive glimpses of it in our studies, our meditations, our experiences, but they're only glimpses. One might even wonder if they are truly glimpses, or perhaps more accurately, reflections of truth. We can use the analogy of the sun and the moon. That is, we look at the moon and see its brilliance and we could assume that it is the sun because it reflects the light of the sun. We may perceive a reflection of truth in any number of ways, but we must realize that our conditioned and limited minds are not seeing reality with a capital R. Annie Besant provides us with insight about our perception of truth. She says, however much we think we only know fragments. And the relationship of those fragments to each other will be very much modified by the larger view to which in the future we shall be able to attain by the extension of our consciousness. How then do we seek truth if it is unknowable at this point in our evolutionary journey? Former international president of the Theosophical Society, Radha Bernier, provides us with insight. She writes, the first and primary condition for one who would follow the religion of truth is a profound and persistent interest in finding it. This implies not having prejudgments or a conviction that one knows already. Truth cannot be discovered by a mind which has fixations, prejudices, and biases of any kind. So the mind must become pure and unruffled, free from opinions, biases, and self-centered emotions. For only in this state can there be an awareness of truth. Bernier points us in the direction of remaining open-minded and consistently inquisitive. We must question everything, everything, even our most deeply held beliefs. Once we stop questioning, our beliefs begin to crystallize. They become dogma. This crystallization spells doom for our own development and in our search for truth. We become stuck, stagnant. This is reinforced in Bernier's additional comments in the same article when she says, the wise man does not come to any conclusion about the truth of things. And only one who keeps a continually open mind can find the truth. Remaining open-minded and consistently inquisitive, questioning our most deeply held beliefs is a very difficult task. Yet it is essential for our continuing evolutionary journey. In terms of organizations, the Theosophical Society is unique, and you know this, of course, because of its lack of dogma and its encouragement that each must find his or her own way. Open-minded inquiry keeps us and our journeys alive and growing. It allows us to recognize the multitude of things that we just do not know or do not understand. And conversely, requires us to admit that we do not have the answers. Rather, we have personal perspectives that can be called relative truths. As we continue on our journeys, hopefully, our perspectives will change and expand as we grow in understanding through experiences. This basic theosophical precept regarding freedom of thought keeps us from standing in one spot and proclaiming that we, and we alone, have the truth. We share theosophy with our words, our beliefs, and ultimately our actions. We encourage self-awareness. We lead lives that align with the theosophical teachings of unity, study, meditation, and service. We provide an open and inviting environment in which individuals can seek their own truth. Unfortunately, we are all aware of individuals who perhaps don't act in this way. Let's see. I'm so sorry. I lost my notes. Sorry. All right. Doesn't matter. As theosophists, we must remain open-minded, searching for glimpses or even reflections of the truth in every corner, in every book, in every quiet whisper from within. It is as open-minded seekers that we will share the magnificence of the divine wisdom through our words, thoughts, and actions, encouraging others to seek truth in their own way through this pathless land. This is our role as Theosophists today, our role in 2022. So let's look at tomorrow. Where are we headed? Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball that tells me the future. However, I feel quite sure that we will continue to do the work as encouraged by the Mahachohan to share the ageless wisdom in an effort to help humanity. We will do it as open-minded seekers, sharing and encouraging. The organization will continue strongly into the future, creating programming, providing member support, sharing the ageless wisdom in as many ways as possible. But there is more, and it is dependent upon each one of us. It can begin in the next minute, in the next second. It doesn't have to wait until some far off future. Not only must we share the wisdom teachings, we must all also work on our own evolutionary growth and development. Going back to our earlier discussion about each of us being on our own journey of progressive development through successive incarnations, we find that this provides the guideposts for the future. It is incumbent upon each of us to overcome the obstacles that confront us in life so that we may continue to grow and develop. Maintain open minds so that we continue to seek for truth and therefore expand our awareness and consciousness. To repeat Radha's statement, the mind must become pure and unruffled, free from opinions, biases, and self-centered emotions, for only in this state can there be an awareness of truth. So, why is our search for truth so important for the future? Well, you probably know the answer to that question already. This is the way we move forward in our journey of progressive development. It's how we expand our consciousness and our awareness. Once we begin to see glimpses, even reflections of glimpses of truth, we begin to realize that we are all one. This great truth is pivotal in our journey and in our spiritual self-transformation. Annie Besant tells us, any one of us who has passed through the experience of a definite enlargement of consciousness knows that the world after that extension looks very different from what it did before. Not because the actual truth has changed. You find it there in the new world, but its relationship has changed to you and to other truths. Instead of now seeing it as a fragment, you see it as a part of a whole to some extent. And that relationship to other parts of the same truth changes. And that relationship to other parts of the same truth changes the values of that truth as you knew it. It is very much the same as if you looked at a picture through a hole. If your picture were covered, say by a sheet, and a hole were made in that sheet, you would only see that part of the picture which was just under the hole. Now, looking at that, it might simply be a patch of blue. And when your picture was unveiled, you would find that the blue might prove to be part of a flower or a piece of the sky or of a garment. Now your view of that piece of blue after the sheet was removed would be very much changed. You were right as to the color, but you have only now found out by seeing it in relationship to other parts of the picture which were hidden by the sheet, to what that color belonged, and even the shade of the color may be modified by other colors around it. That is very much like what happens with an expansion of consciousness. Your blue has not changed, but it has changed its relationships. It has proved to be part of something. When you saw it before, it was isolated, and now it is not so. Hence, your view of it becomes very, very different. You have not found it to be untrue in itself, but your estimate of its value has profoundly altered. Thus, as our consciousness changes, we change. Our perceptions are altered, we are transformed, regenerated. In Sri Ram, former international president of the Theosophical Society, writes, the Mahatmas, who aid evolution, although they are interested in all changes that make for human progress, are especially concerned with the spiritual regeneration of mankind, which is of fundamental importance. Because when that takes place, all else follows. What the Mahatmas want is this regeneration, beginning with ourselves. Our role in the future is to transform or regenerate ourselves, because in so doing, we are transforming the world around us. We are helping to expand the consciousness of all life and thereby alleviating the suffering of humanity. So our work for the future is to work on ourselves. Certainly, we support the organization, but perhaps the most important component of our work, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everybody's faces. But perhaps the most important component of our work is to transform ourselves and to move forward on the path of progressive development. In this way, we change the world. We help to alleviate the suffering through the expansion of our own consciousness, which impacts all consciousness. Now, we began with the adjuration of the Mahachohan to share the wisdom teachings in an effort to alleviate the suffering in the world. We have moved through almost 150 years of working to follow his bidding. We'll move through the next 150 years, continuing to share the ageless wisdom teachings in any number of ways, including through our ambassadorship of the Theosophical Society, our own open-minded seeking for truth, and our own spiritual self-transformation. Thank you.